Welcome back to another episode of Networking Unleashed, where we explore the power of relationships to unlock the real business success. I'm your host, Michael Forman. We are diving into one of the most essential yet often overlooked aspects of the entrepreneurial and career journey networking as your launchpad. My guest today has been in the trenches, launching startups, navigating the job hunt, and building businesses from scratch. He knows what it takes to turn a handshake into a game changer and how the right conversation can lead to your next big opportunity. Whether you're a job seeker trying to stand out, a new entrepreneur looking for traction, or someone deep in the startup grind, this episode is packed with powerful insights to help you build your profitable connections from day one. So grab your notebook or favorite app and get ready to rethink how you approach every introduction. Let's unleash some next level networking. Welcome, Colin. Welcome to my podcast. Welcome for my listeners. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. My background was interesting. I graduated from Emory University in Atlanta, close to where you're at, in 2012. And then I got a job at the world's largest hedge fund, which I thought I had made it. I was at Bridgewater Associates in Connecticut. And I promptly got fired in 5 months. I ended up having dinner with the guy who hired me there. He was a recruiter. He said, "Hey, I still like you. I appreciate you reaching out. Why don't you come be a recruiter for me?" And so I ended up being a recruiter for the next year. I loved it, adored it, met amazing people, taught myself all about different industries, made a million connections. And then I ended up hiring myself at one of my open roles in Seattle at a startup out there. And then about a year or so after that, maybe a year and a half, I got a phone call from one of my high school best friends who I had helped start her business. She had gotten into Techstars Boulder and she said, "Hey, I want you to be on the founding team." And I dropped everything in Seattle. I drove 20 hours down to Denver and I made $1,600 a month. It was wonderful, great summer. We raised a few $1 million and then yada, yada, yada. We all got laid off at 1 p.m. on a Monday, 3 years later. And 3 weeks after that, I started my own company, which is what I'm mostly known for, which is Sheets and Giggles. And that is a sustainable bedding brand. I've been doing that for 7 years now. We make bed sheets, pillows, mattresses out of eucalyptus trees. And we were actually just on Good Morning America last month for Sleep Week. So it's been a wonderful ride.
Wow, congratulations. That sounds like a quite a bumpy road, but you finally got to it and you're quite successful. So that's really great. Let me start off by asking you a few questions. When you're first starting your business, what role did networking play in getting things off the ground?
Oh, it was essential. Then that when I started Sheets and Giggles, I was 27 years old. I had just gotten laid off, right? And I had 3 years of experience in consumer brands under my belt in a very different space in hardware, wearable technology. And I thought to myself, okay, at this point in my life, I've got two options. I can move back to Seattle. I can leverage my relationships there. I can maybe work at Microsoft or Amazon or Boeing or Starbucks, somewhere interesting that's based in Seattle. Or I can take all the experience of the last 3 years, all the people I've met, my CEO, my COO, our investors, our board members, the Techstars network, and I can leverage those relationships and start my own company. And I decided that it was now or never. And it was the perfect time to start my own business with those relationships that I had built specifically. And there's a bunch of different pieces that relationships help me out with. The first and foremost, I knew nothing about fabrics. I had never done anything in fabric. I didn't know anything about textiles. And so the first connection I reached out to were actually the founders of a Boulder company called Shinesty. And they have a wonderful business. They make novelty ski clothing as well as amazing underwear. And I did not know the first thing about how to source fabrics. And so I had lunch with those guys. I had a beer with them, and they introduced me to somebody in California who I then flew out to meet. I bought him lunch. His name was Mike. Mike ended up becoming my mentor, and he ended up becoming my director of product for 6 years at Sheets and Giggles. That's just one example of many. My former coworkers became investors in the business. My crowdfunding customers included friends, colleagues, people I'd met over the course of my career at that point. And everybody I worked with, I met through somebody else in the beginning, and those relationships helped me get the company off the ground.
That's great. That is the true sense of networking and the building of relationships. And listen, I'm the first person to say that the days of building a client list is really out the window. It's the days of building relationships. And you took relationship to the next level. You have them as investors, as COOs, and things like that. So you really took it to the next level. Let me ask you a question. Can you share a moment when a single connection opened a major door for you, either in business or during a job search?
It was definitely the one that I mentioned a second ago, where I had met my director of product through a connection with the founders of Shinesty. That was incredibly helpful. I think there's definitely more examples in my life. I had mentioned earlier, I got hired by my first two jobs, I got hired by the same guy. So that was really, he hired me at Bridgewater. And then after I got fired, we had dinner, and he goes, I still really like you, man. And if you want to work with me, I'd love to have you as a recruiter. And he hired me $40,000 a year, no commission, as a recruiter, my second job out of college. And then his name's Nate. We stayed in touch. We invited each other to our weddings. We became good friends. And he's since become a software engineer. And funny enough, now he and I operate on the side a resume builder that you've seen called sheetsresume.com, that he and I started together last year on our nights and weekends. And that's been tremendous. And that's doing wonderful side revenue for both of us. And those connections, so funny to think about. The guy that hired me at my first job out of college is now in my second job, is now my business partner 13 years later in a business that I run, that I'm enabled to do because of all the other relationships that I have in running Sheets and Giggles. And so that's really cool. That's probably my strongest relationship over the course of my career, and that's led to a lot.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I think it's amazing that you developed that friendship from the guy who hired you, or
It's crazy. And from his perspective, he hired this kid out of college in
that's cool.
2012 to go work for one of his clients. And 13 years later, he's got two kids. He's married. I'm married. And we both have a business that generates six figures of side income for us. And just because he met me through recruiting and then stayed in touch with me as well, now he has this extra income stream that wouldn't have been possible without what I've built in terms of my reputation on the internet with helping people with their resumes. And so, from his perspective, it's pretty wild too, the way that life leads you and the way that relationships can twist and turn over time.
That's true. You never close that door completely. You always leave it open a crack because you don't know who or what is going to walk through that crack. That's providing that everything works out well, which apparently it did. What advice would you give someone trying to network during a career transition or job hunt?
There's two things. One is it's just dating. So don't come across as desperate. If you come across as, I have to meet with you, I need help, it's okay to be vulnerable and to say, hey, I could really use your advice. It's another thing to come across as desperate, because then people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to get involved with your situation or what you got going on. The second piece of advice is to buy them lunch. Almost no, this is such a dumb piece of advice, but hopefully it's not, maybe not obvious to everyone. If you want somebody's mentorship, you just shoot them an email, give them a call, approach them at an event and say, hey, I'd love to pick your brain. Could I buy you lunch sometime? And just pick up the tab. It'll cost you 30 bucks, 40 bucks. Pick up the tab at lunch, sit down with them. You'll get 2 hours of their time, undivided attention. They won't be on their phone. They won't be thinking about other things. They'll be listening to you. And then after that meeting, say, hey, this was amazing. Would you mind getting together for breakfast sometime, maybe in the next week or two? I'd love to ask you a few more questions. And now you built now they like you, hopefully, right? They've spent time with you and they want to help you out. And so so many people ask me for my time, and I'm fine with giving it to them. I try to subscribe to the theory of give first, which maybe I can talk about more later. But it is challenging when you have a very busy schedule to give everybody time who asks for it. But I do eat lunch every day. And so if you ask me to grab lunch on a random Friday, I already have that time built in my calendar. I have to eat food. And so I might as well sit across from somebody and try to help them out. So that's a really good way to get somebody to give you the time of day.
That's always good. I'm asked several times a week, usually through LinkedIn or something else, where they're always asking me something about networking. And only one or two of them have offered to buy me lunch, which I took them up on, by the way.
Always. I'll say yes to a
Um,
free lunch
oh,
anytime, and that doesn't matter
ab-
how successful I am.
absolutely. But I'm always willing to give my advice on the
Hmm.
different networking or communication challenges that they may have. So that's such great advice, which I don't know if everybody would just think of, but it's a great thing to ask, to
It
offer.
seems obvious to me, but I get a lot of people who want to buy me a cup of coffee and that sort of thing, and I'm fine with that. Cup of coffee, hey, let's grab a cup of coffee. I want to pick your brain. But one, I'm trying to limit my caffeine intake. So, like, I can't always do a cup of coffee. And then two is it like limits you to a morning or early afternoon meeting. And mornings are usually really busy for people that are busy people. And then three is a coffee can only take 15 minutes to drink. So it's like I understand that you're trying to be cognizant of their time and you're like, hey, it's very quick. Let's just grab a cup of coffee. But that's not what you want to do. You actually want to pick their brain, and conversations don't really get cooking until about 30 minutes into the conversation. And so I think that's getting them breakfast, getting them lunch. That's my go-to. Don't do dinners too intimate. Breakfast or lunch.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Good advice. Good advice. Okay. How do you approach building relationships with investors, mentors, or co-founders in the startup world?
I follow a really simple rule. I just treat people the way that I want to be treated. Some guy said that. I can't remember his name.
George
Um,
Arthurs?
it's a simple rule. It's golden, if you will. And so for investors, mentors, business partners, I always just do the best I can to treat them exactly the way I would want to be treated in any situation. And so investors, that means being cognizant of their time, understanding that they are extremely busy. They're talking to a bunch of different companies at once. They have to say no 99% of the time and to not be upset or take it personally if they say no. Always be courteous when they give you their time and talk to them like human beings. I think that founders, I was guilty of this early in my career for sure, like in my early 20s, mid 20s. When we were raising money for my last company, where I wasn't the founder, but I was on the founding team and I was in these meetings, I looked at these investors as like they were so far above me. Like, I could, like, I was intimidated, right? Like, I didn't want to say the wrong thing. But my friend Jackie, who is the founder of the last company that I was at, I actually loved her perspective on this. She would just say, these people just want to be treated like people. They just want to be treated like everyday people, like your friend. And that's what I've always taken with me. And that's been really successful is like just talking to them like normal human beings. And then when it comes to mentors, again, you've got to ask people if they're willing to mentor you. It's got to be a double opt-in relationship. It cannot be, I need your mentorship. I want your mentorship. Give it to me. Can I please have it? It has to be a two-way relationship where they opt in and they are committed to giving you their time. If they do that, I do like to ask for regular time. So I do like sporadic stuff where it's like, hey, can I call you if I have a question? But I also like if it's hey, can we meet every Friday at 4 p.m. and we'll get a beer or again, my treat, something like that. And it's a good way to end the week and you get their advice. And the last thing I'll say is come to them with a ton of questions all ready to go. Don't waste their time because if they spend an hour with you and they feel like they're not giving you any help or advice, they're probably going to come back to you and say, hey, I don't think this is a good use of my time. I don't know if this is a good use of your time. And that's the last thing you want. So make sure that you come ready with questions and advice that you need.
That's very good. You have to remember that your mentor is also a person in business. I'm a mentor to 5 or 6 people, probably now 3 or 4 people, but I have a mentor myself. So it's
Mm,
like a chain that you're going up. I coach students and I have a class with them every week, but I have my mentor hour with each of them on a specific day. And I ask for an hour on a specific day for my
yep.
mentor. And you're right, it's got to be a give and take. And both sides really have to get something out of it. Being a mentor, you're getting the ability to help somebody else. That's
Right.
what
It's the best.
I get it right. And I'm answering questions and everything else. So yes, that's very important for being a mentor. Now, just give me this in your opinion. What's the difference between networking and relationship building?
Oh, that's a tough one. Just because so I've always been one, and this is funny because we probably see differently on this, or maybe we just don't define terms the same. I have always had a healthy dislike of networking. And the reason is because I don't like feeling like someone is talking to me just because they want or need something. And I don't like feeling like I'm only talking to somebody because I want or need something. To me, that feels very inhuman and it feels very like Machiavellian. And so I really like thinking about networking and relationship building as really one and the same. And this kind of goes back to what I said a second ago, is treat people the way you want to be treated. I just go to events and I will talk to people about anything, doesn't have to do with business, can be family, current events, topical stuff, sports. And if I establish a relationship with someone, then I've networked with them. Does that make sense? So I don't see them as distinct, actually. I actually would prefer if networking was not really a thing and people didn't go to these things with the expectation of meeting someone who could help them climb, but rather if they just went to these things looking for friends and looking for people that became part of who they are. And I think friends are the pieces of you that you carry with around and that you get to share with the world. And so the more friends you have, the more of these pieces that you get to share with the world. And so I've got a lot of friends. I love my friends. I have very deep relationships with them. I don't have few, I have many, and I consider most of my business contacts friends as well. I don't really have that delineation that some people have, that hard delineation between business and personal.
When you go to a networking event, first of all, you have to go with a servant's heart.
Mhm.
Okay. You have to look to give and not to receive. That's
Yep.
the first. You should have that in your mind before you even go. And I didn't develop this, of course. I stole it from somebody else. But FORM, family, occupation, recreation, and a message. I have all that so that I can build up a rapport with somebody. And when I walk up to them and I speak to them, I'm asking them about themselves, about what they do. If family comes into it, recreation comes into it, whatever. But I have them talking about themselves. And then really what I wind up with is I say, okay, how can I make you more successful? Can I be a good referral source for you? And with a 3 or 4 hour event, you come back with about 15 or 20 business cards. I used to, listen, I was in a mortgage field. I went to a networking event. I came home with a shoebox
Yeah.
filled with business
Yeah.
cards,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was worthless.
Yeah.
But if I come back with that 15 or 20, I can follow up properly
And
and
personally. Right.
impersonally. And you're right. And so that's the difference. I feel that ever since the pandemic, people lost their minds. They forgot how to
Yeah.
network, they forgot how to communicate, they forgot everything. So
Yep.
I'm going around teaching them how to get back in touch. I'm trying to make them a better version of themselves.
Mm.
Okay. That's my whole shtick, so to speak.
I guess for me, and I agree with you, one of the rules that I followed my whole career that I learned early on when I was a recruiter is that people will do business with people they like, and they will not do business with people they don't like.
And
And in
trust.
fact, they will then trust and they will inconvenience themselves to avoid doing business with people they don't like or trust. And so that I think is really important as well as you've gotta be likable. And a good way to be likable is not to always be asking for something. Like I was at an event the other day. It was definitely like a networking event, but it was also like it was like for startup founders in Miami, and we had probably 40 people there, and we were talking and laughing, and we had breakout sessions and stuff, and everything was great, and it was like a very fun event, and I was actually very surprised at how like organic and nice it felt. And it was also for people like find co-founders and build their next thing. And at the very end, this guy came up to me. I'm not trying to crush him, but he just was like, "Hey, like I heard you have an e-commerce company, Sheets and Giggles." And I was like, "Yeah." And then he was like, "How do you do your marketing?" And I was like, "All the usual suspects, like Google, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, like radio, podcast." And he's like, "Well, I have a marketing agency. I do all that. Like, I help with all that." And I was like, "All right." I was like, "Thanks. I'm not gonna hire you in 45 seconds." He could have cared less about like me, my company, who I was. He just wanted to let me know that he could sell something to me. And I was like, great, what a awful aftertaste to have after a really fun night getting to know people.
Yeah, there's a mantra for networking. If they know you, if they like you and trust you, they'll do business with you.
Yeah.
So to know you, like you went to that get together, 40 people or so, everybody knew you because you're a nice guy, you're a good looking guy. Hey, everything's fine, right? But like you, then that narrows the field down because you may have said something to somebody or somebody that it didn't go very well. But like you brings it down a little bit. But trust factor, that brings it down even more because they don't know you and you don't know them. So that trust factor is an intricate part of the mantra. But know you, like you, and trust you, and then people will start to do business with you.
Yep. Yep. It's cart and horse. And
Yep,
I think people will very often screw up that order. Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. How can somebody just starting out, maybe with no title or traction, create a valuable connection?
Oh, I see this a lot with college students and with new grads that are trying to become entrepreneurs. It's so hard for them. First off, I think it's really hard to make connections over LinkedIn. So I really don't recommend that that's where you spend your time. Humans are social creatures. So I would very much advise people to spend time at in-person events, events hosted by your university, events hosted on Meetup. There's tons and tons of event apps and pages and stuff like that. So look for networking apps, look for meetup apps, go to them. Look, you're gonna have to wade through a lot of waist-high sand to find people that are worth meeting. And when you do find people that are worth meeting, that's when you have to be ready to make that connection, be personable, buy them lunch. I think that's probably the best advice that I mentioned earlier is I'll take lunch from anybody anytime, right? As long as they're not completely awful to spend an hour with. And that's going to be your best bet is like those in-person connections. And don't be afraid to like I said earlier, don't come off as desperate, but don't be afraid to humble yourself a little bit and to say, hey, look, I'm a new grad. I'm early in my career. I don't have a lot of connections. I'm super interested in the space that you're in. I'm really excited to learn more about XYZ. Do you think that you maybe have time to grab lunch with me and tell me a little bit more about your journey? And I'd love to understand more about where you're coming from. Like that, I think that's a good way to ask people and to get mentorship. You don't need a title or anything like that. It's definitely at some point everybody wants to meet with you. And that transition happens fast, man. I remember, I'll never forget, it was 2018 and I was launching my crowdfunding campaign for Sheets and Giggles. And I was just this random dude in Denver that had been through Techstars, but like nobody really knew me. And I was running a crowdfunding campaign and it was gonna do really well. I knew it was gonna do really well, and I had done a lot of preparation for it. I had done the videos, the photos, the email gathering. I had set up the pages. I had my agency ready to go. I had all these different things. And I reached out in February or March, I think it was like March of 2018 to Denver Startup Week. And I was like, hey, I would love to do a panel or a session on crowdfunding. I think a lot of people would need help. Crowdfunding would be great for early entrepreneurs to understand how to run a successful crowdfund. And Denver Startup Week emailed me back very politely, and they said, hey, Colin, with all due respect, that's great that you're launching this company. You should actually launch it and do something before you want to give advice to other people. And I said, okay, like that's fair. And I ended up doing the crowdfund. We raised about $300,000 in pre-orders for our bed sheets, biggest bed sheet campaign of all time on Indiegogo. And then 6 months after that, in September 2018, I won first place at a Denver Startup Week pitch competition. And I was the number one startup in Denver, and everybody saw me on stage, and I blew the house down. And then the next year in 2019, they invited me to judge the pitch competition for Denver Startup Week. And I hosted a panel every year, Denver Startup Week after that. And so it's so funny they asked me to do it. And it's so funny like to think about how fast that can change. Same guy, same knowledge, 6 months later, everybody wanted to know me.
It's
And
your credibility.
it's credibility for sure, but like I find it interesting that people aren't able to differentiate between people who like have it and people who don't. That always blows my mind, whether it's with like startup founders or employees or politicians. People seem to be really unable to talk to someone and just immediately know this guy has it, this woman has it, like this person has it. And so I they always look for that indicator. They always look for that traction in order to have that credibility. So I would also say that a corollary to this that's really unfortunate is that in America, oftentimes for people, wealth equals wisdom because wealth is that like tangible credibility. And God, I have seen in my career that is not true. It does not equal wisdom. And so that's the unfortunate side effect of this is people will gravitate towards the wrong people because they think that they know something they don't, when in reality they inherited their money, maybe they got lucky, maybe they're very unethical. There's a bunch of different reasons why that is.
That's
And maybe
that's
a lot of people work hard for their money. So I'm just saying it's not the great barometer that people think it is.
yeah, no, it's not. I have found very wealthy people that really are dumber than a box of rocks. They just they're just how did you possibly get this wealthy because you don't know anything. And
Sometimes, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Sometimes I think it's because they're actually too dumb. Sorry, this is really uncharitable, and this is not everyone. I want to explain, but some people are too dumb to ever introspect, and they never stop and think, am I good? Do I deserve this? Am I good enough? What am I doing wrong? They don't have that imposter syndrome. And sometimes it's like a superpower because they literally can just go for it and they think that they're God's gift to mankind and they will just go and get it and grab everything they can and have no second thoughts about it. And I can't do that. I don't. I always have second thoughts about, am I doing things the right way? Am I deserving of this? Am I giving back enough? All those things. And anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
yeah, no, it's I'm always looking into myself after I do a speaking engagement or workshop or something else like that. I'm looking like what can I do better? What did I screw up on? Oh my God, I was so bad. I shouldn't have said that. But and have all the tools. I have the QR code leading to my Google Doc sheet. Did I do this? This was it. And give me a couple of stars. I have everything. Okay. But I have to look within myself to see how well I did. And that's not so easy to do. Have you ever made a networking mistake that taught you something important?
a mistake or a faux pas? Oh yeah, I've got a good one. When I was 25, I was going through Techstars Boulder, and you can hear me now. I'm honest, and I'm not mean. I really try to always be charitable to people as best I can and try not to be an asshole. But I definitely speak my mind. And especially when my friends are hurting, I will speak my mind. And when I was 25, it was almost 10 years ago now, I had just moved to Colorado from Seattle for Techstars Boulder, 2015. And one of my friends who was the CEO of the company that I moved my whole life to Colorado for was basically in tears because an investor had told her no and had told her no in a very, I think, aggressive, really unprofessional. And I was in a coffee shop with her and I had just moved there like a week before, 2 weeks before. And I remember saying very vividly, look, if that guy said that and he passed on you, then that guy's a fucking idiot. And that's what I said. I was like, I was trying to comfort my friend. And also, like, I'm sure there was a kernel of truth in there. And then I'll never forget, I got called into the Techstars main office like 2 hours later. And they were like, hey, you're new to Colorado, huh? I was like, yeah, I just got here like a week and a half ago. And they're like, yeah, so it's a really small world out here. And you were at a coffee shop that everyone goes to in this town. And somebody heard you call so and so a fucking idiot. And, and that immediately got back to me before you left the coffee shop. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, and then I remember literally trying to mount a defense in the office. And I was like, the reason he passed is X, Y, and Z. And they were like, Colin, whatever the case, you cannot say that about people like in this community. Like you will build a bad reputation very rapidly. And I don't know if it's because I don't know. I don't know why I did that aside from just trying to comfort my friend, but that was such an important moment for me because I was like, and that's unlocked this thing that I tell people as a lesson is speak well about people behind their back. That is like one of my maybe a superpower is I will sing somebody's praises often when they're not around. And that I think also gets back to people. And so that was, I think, a big moment for me of I don't think I've ever spoken poorly about somebody behind their back in the last decade since that moment because it's not worth it. And it's really not.
It's not, and it taught you a valuable lesson, and you learned from that lesson. So I think it worked out pretty well. I think it was funny when it happened,
It was
but
embarrassing.
it was a little embarrassing, okay? But I think it was good that it happened, and it learned. Listen, I went to the school of hard knocks, okay?
Yeah.
I did everything wrong before I did it right. So I had to learn things on the fly, just as you did. But that was very good. In today's digital first world, how can professionals make meaningful connections without always being face to face?
Yeah, if you're asking specifically how to do it when you're not face to face, that is a toughie. I would say going through existing warm introductions is obviously the best way to do it. Don't force a warm introduction. Don't go to somebody that you barely know and be like, hey, can you introduce me to this other person that you barely know? Because then it's just like it's not a warm introduction. It's kind of like an annoying, hey, Colin, I met you one time at this event like 4 years ago. And this other person who I've met one time asked me, they saw I was connected with you on LinkedIn and they asked me to introduce you. That's not a good way to go about it. So I would say like actual warm introductions where you connect with people, you get to know them, and then organically could be months or years later, like having known these people, if you then ask them, hey, do you know anyone in this field or this space? That's a really good way to do it. So I would reach out to your personal connections, your really strong ones right now, and I would ask them, do you know anyone that can help me with this? And then somebody will come to their mind that they have a connection with, and they may not even be connected to that person on LinkedIn, right? Because am I connected to my best friend in the world on LinkedIn? No, actually, like most of them, not at all. And so, like, most of my strongest connections are actually offline, or at least they're off LinkedIn. And so you may miss the forest for the trees completely. If you look at my Rolodex on LinkedIn and you want to know who I know, it's very much my strongest connections are not on that platform.
Yeah, it reminds me of my time when I was sitting behind a desk. I had two Rolodexes. They were filled. And now with digital and everything else, it's a little bit less. And I don't have that. I have my home desk, but the digital world, because you can have your thousands and thousands of connections on LinkedIn, but they're not
Mm,
relationships.
they're not
That,
relationships.
that's the key. What is your go-to networking move? Something you do consistently that brings results.
I don't. It's so funny. It's the best advice for all, and it's totally different for different people. Depends on your skills and your natural charisma and your extemporaneous speaking ability. And first off, take an extemporaneous speaking class. That may be a good tip. That's one of the best things I've ever done. When I was 13 years old, I took extemporaneous speaking the summer before high school, and you had 5 minutes to to write and memorize sorry, you had 30 minutes to write and memorize a 5 minute speech on a random topic that you pulled out of a hat. And that was something. Like, that was so educational for me in terms of how to actually come up with something on the fly and speak to people organically without sounding like it's prepared. And so that may be a good tip, is go take an extemporaneous speaking class and learn how to actually speak without thinking. And then the second thing I would say is, again, there's an old adage: if you want money, ask for advice, and if you want advice, ask for money. And I think that's really true in networking. If you want network connections, try to build like friendships, I think. And just and so don't approach it. If you want professional connections, be personal. And I think that's like what you were saying earlier with the form is, and I don't think about it in those terms, but if I can get to know somebody on a personal level, what they do, why they do it, why it speaks to them, why they dedicated their lives to this, what their major challenges are, like all these things are good questions to ask people, but not in an interrogatory way. That's the other thing, is like sometimes people interrogate me. They're like, what are your biggest challenges right now? And I'm like, oh, dude, I have so much anxiety. Don't make me list out my biggest
Right.
challenges right now. I go to sleep thinking about these business problems. I don't ask me if I'm excited if the Panthers are defending the Stanley Cup, or ask me if I have any kids, or if I have any nieces and nephews, or ask me where I'm from and like where I went to school and all. That's what I like to do with people. And then once I get to know them, like it's just an organic conversation. So that's my best advice to people: as much as you possibly can, just talk to people like a normal conversation.
That's great advice. Great advice. That's where form comes in. That's just to help you bring in different ideas of different people, different things, whatever. But that is great sound advice. Anybody that listening should really listen to that. Now let's bring this full circle. What mindset should people adopt if they want to build a network that leads to real opportunity, not just business cards?
Oh, you should be the person that everyone leaves the room thinking about. I guess that's maybe the best way to put it. And part of this is knowing your audience, right? So this also goes back to pitching in front of a crowd. If you know your audience and you understand the feeling you want to leave them with, like when I pitch in front of a crowd, when I get off the stage, I want every first off, you have to know your audience. Are they investors? Are they buyers? Or are they lay people? Are they just there to be entertained? Who is your audience? And then once you understand who they are, you can understand how you want to make them feel. So if you go to a networking event and your audience is other professionals who are busy, who are working on their own problems, who are consumed with their own things, okay, great. They don't really give a fuck about my problems or like the things that I'm working on necessarily. Maybe they care more about people who have a common empathy and understanding for the challenges that they're going through. And maybe they want a friend who they can talk to openly without fear of being judged or a fear of being too vulnerable, because startup CEOs are never allowed to take off their rose-colored optimism glasses. They're never allowed to speak freely about the challenges that face their company. And so if I go to a networking event and I understand that these people are people like me and I can empathize with them and I can make them feel like when they leave the room, like that guy Colin, I can be open with him. I can be myself with him. I can be vulnerable with him. And I feel like he's being honest with me, so I will be honest with him. That is, I think, the best feeling that I like to leave people with. And so I think that's probably the best rule I can give you is know your audience, understand the feeling you want to leave them with, and then go out and achieve that. And there's multiple ways to achieve your goal. And you'll get a lot of clarity in thinking about when I leave the room, how are they going to feel? Are they going to feel like I was selling them something? Are they going to feel like I only gave a shit about their credit card number? Are they going to feel like I'm desperate? Are they going to feel like I'm a entrepreneur? Are they going to feel like I have no valuable experience to share, that I can't empathize with them, that I was self-absorbed? Those are all things that people do feel about people when they leave networking events. Every single time you go to one, you will meet people that make you feel exactly like that. And so that's a disaster. You never want that. Think hard and decide before you go in how they're going to feel about you when you leave.
That's great advice. That's a great advice for anybody. Even I'm thinking about how I leave the room, how I leave people, because I want them to have the lasting impression of my talk and everything else. That's great advice. Colin, I can't begin to tell you how I enjoyed this podcast because you spoke about everything that I truly believe in. If somebody want to get hold of you, how would they get hold of you?
I'm very easy to find. I am on LinkedIn, but I do not post. I do not subscribe to the LinkedIn lunatic theory of networking, although there are some valuable posts on there sometimes. But Colin McIntosh, you can find me at my two main companies, Sheets and Giggles. And then if you're a job hunter and you need some resume help, sheetsresume.com is my passion project that I do on the side. And my emails, I think, for both of those sites are public on the website, and you can reach me pretty easily.
That's great. Colin, thank you for coming on the podcast. I hope everybody enjoyed what you had to say.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you having me. It's a really fun conversation.
Well, hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let me just read a few of our sponsors that we have. Struggling to reach success? Maybe it's time to quit. In Quit Your Way to Success by Rodney Davis, this reveals 27 steps to breaking bad habits that hold you back. This powerful book helps you rewire your mindset, take control of your actions, and turn setbacks into stepping stones. With real life examples, motivational quotes, and actionable lessons, especially for sales professionals, you'll gain the tools to quit what's stopping you and start winning. Transform your future today. So Quit Your Way to Success by Rodney Davis, available now on Amazon. And this is a nonprofit called Revved Up Kids. This is something I believe in wholeheartedly. Revved Up Kids is on a mission to protect children and teens from sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. They provide prevention training programs for children, teens, and adults. To learn more, go to revvedupkids.org. That's REVVEDUPKIDS.org. Well, that's a wrap, folks. A huge thank you to our special guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or my website, Michael. Remember, until next time, keep practicing, keep connecting, and keep building those relationships. This is Michael A. Forman signing off. Take care and happy networking. A wrap, folks. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. If you're interested in my digital courses, being coached, or having me come and talk to your company, just go to Michael and fill out the request form. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, or my website, forman.com/podcasts.